frying pan.
And into the fire. Run! Run!
Hello and welcome to another Out of the Frying Pan podcast YouTube video. A little while ago now, when I did an unboxing of this fella, I promised that I would do some videos when I started to build him. So this first video is just going to be a really brief one, talking you through the process of washing Forge World resin, or any resin really. Forge World resin definitely needs it in my experience, and the tools I'm going to need to build it, because if you've never built anything this big before, you may not have all those tools at hand. And it just gives you a little tip. I'm not going to be any building or painting in this video. It really is just a very short introductory. This is how you wash a model, why you wash a model, these are the tools I'm going to use, and then in future videos I'm going to show you little bits. So it'll be probably not building the whole thing on video, because I don't think that'll be very interesting, though if anyone really wants to see it, put it in the comments, I may consider it. But I'll probably show you how I clean up a certain part of the model, assemble it a little bit so you get the idea of the process, and you can go away and do it all yourself if you happen to have one of these or think about getting one of these. Anyway, I'll stop rambling. Let's take it to washing of the model. I never thought I'd utter these words on a video for YouTube, but here we are at my kitchen sink. Rather than just babble on when I was talking about the tools and things to use, I thought I'd actually just come to the sink and show you a little bit before I actually start to the cleaning. Yeah, I won't make you sit and watch all the cleaning because it would be incredibly boring. Washing up liquid. Use a good one if you can. Nothing too cheap. You want something with sort of high concentrate. Toothbrush, anything that's fairly soft bristled that you can use to help scrub the miniatures, and then a sieve. This I find is quite important, that when you're straining your bowls and things out from the bits over the sink later, you want to make sure you don't lose any little bits down the sink, so I always pour through a sieve. Use your bowl, don't use it directly in the sink. Obvious reasons. You lose something down the plug hole, then you're going to be dismantling your U-bend, and it's not going to be very fun. There's going to be lots of swearing. Your wife or significant other may not be happy with you either for doing that. And then the final tip really for the really small bits, if you can, I use these old bowls and actually soak them in the old bowls separately. It means I can leave them soaking while I scrub some of the bigger bits. And it's just easier to do, and if I need to use the sink for anything, I can actually just put this bowl to a side and leave it soaking for a while. Now, I tend to try and make the water as hot as I can kind of bear to put my hands in, really to break down that grease, the greasy stuff, which is the mold release agent, which is why we're washing the resin in the first place. There we go. I'll actually start filling it as I record. I put a little bit in these small bowls, and those little bits are all the kind of the wing spikes and Bilbo himself and the headpieces and things. So they are now already soaking, and what will happen is you won't see it on the video because I will stop and speed it up a little bit, but I will I'll probably leave everything in the sink soaking for an hour or two until the water starts to get a little bit colder. My water is quite hot out the tap. It's like nearly boiling point. I just scald my hand up, I put it under there now. If your hot doesn't come out that hot, maybe even worth risking a bit of boiling water in there. Don't put straight boiling water in there. It will soften the resin, which is good if you need to reshape it, but if you don't want to do that at this stage, you just want to make sure the water's as hot as possible. Right, I'm going to start chucking the big chunky bits in. Leave them to have a good soak. There you go. I'm not going to fit too much else in here. Last box. Chuck it all in. And that's it. I'm actually going to leave that now, go away, do some work, have a coffee, and come back shortly. Once it's cooled down a little bit, I'm going to have a good scrub with the toothbrush and then leave it to dry, and then we'll see whether it needs to be washed again. So I'm back. I've left it about half an hour only. I don't know what the optimal is. I suppose the longer you leave it, the more chance it's had a good soak, and some of that mold release agent will come off. Also, the water's getting colder, and grease and cold water. I'm not great with science, but grease and cold water from my washing up experience is never a good thing. So I like to kind of have a go at it with a brush if I've got time to do it. Sometimes I leave it soaking longer purely because it's convenient for me to just leave the stuff soaking, but I'll give it a go, I'll give it a scrub. And then what I always do with all these processes when it comes to washing is you clean it, look at it when it's dry. If the mold release agents, if there's still some on there, then you pop it back in for another soak, another wash. So here goes. You know, I won't sit here for, it's probably going to take me about half an hour. You're not going to watch half an hour of me scrubbing resin miniature with a toothbrush. That'll be boring. I'll speed some up, cut some out, etc, etc. But yeah, that's what I do. But all I'm doing is in the water if I can, using my toothbrush just to scrub all over each piece of the miniature, then pop it on the draining board. As simple as that. I have heard people in the past talking about, and I've done this as well with some of the smaller miniatures, sometimes it's worth cleaning up the miniatures beforehand and then giving them their bath and their wash, because that helps get rid of all the little bits of resin dust on them and really clears them up. And I can really see the logic in that. That seems to make sense. The only reason I don't is sometimes it's hot, like here, it's easier to hold on to the miniature using the gate. I think it's just called a gate. And if you do have a problem, occasionally with the Forge World miniature, you just wash and wash and wash and you can't get the release agent and paint never adheres to it. Forge World is fantastic at sorting that out for you and maybe replacing the piece or the model. Again, I prefer to, if I can, leave it as whole as possible on its gates before I start playing around with it before I do that. This is my stage to check really that the model's okay. It's been a long time since I've had a miniature that's had any issues with it. Luckily none that I've purchased, sometimes clients' miniatures for my commission painting stuff. So. Sometimes if you are able to leave them for a long time, and then as I said, they sit in their own grease, but if you rinse them off and put them in hot water again, sometimes you don't need to do much scrubbing, but I suppose it's whatever suits you at the time. Sometimes I need to get something done quickly so I can start work on it. Sometimes I'm working on something else, so leaving it soaking for a long time works perfectly for me. Thought I'd just bring you back here, and so I've scrubbed the main parts of Smaug. I'm just going to do what I suggested earlier and pour this water away through my sieve. The plug I've got at the bottom of my sink is quite good anyway. It has quite small gaps, but shouldn't be any bits in that one anyway because it was all the larger pieces, but you never know. There's just little bits of resin dust in there, nothing that's nothing exciting. And now I've got like the smaller bowls, what I tend to do with those, scrub it in the water very, very quickly. Make sure I get over all the pieces. I don't want to lose any of them, so maybe pop them in the sieve. Alright, just back with the final check. I'm just going to pour the water over the sieve. Just make sure there's no little bits that shouldn't be there. Looking pretty good. Putting it into the bowl as well for extra protection. Definitely worth it with smaller bits, and if you're doing this with, you know, with infantry models, cavalry models, the standard, more standard Forge World stuff, definitely worth doing. Give it a little rinse through. And then that's that, they're all washed. Thing to do now is wait for them to dry and see whether there's any mold release agent. If not, literally rinse and repeat and keep going. And here we are with some of the tools that we're going to need to work with resin kits, and particularly larger resin kits. So I'm just going to take you through the things I use. There's probably more things that other people use. There's probably things that you can get away with not using, but I'm just going to take you through what I do. And it's covered me for building most of the sort of larger resin kits around. So some of these things look quite chunky, which if you haven't built anything bigger than a sort of cavalry model or something before that's in Forge World resin, and you probably wonder why we need them. But I'll take you through those now anyway. Let's start with the big ones then anyway. So if I just grab over a couple of the larger pieces here. So I may be wrong with the names, but I believe these are called gates. It's where the resin goes in, and that will be as part of the mould, and that would be at the top of the mould. Now, on smaller models, you can just use regular set of clippers like this, clip away, easy done. The danger is with these thicker ones, you clip and it can actually shatter and snap off part of the model at the wrong place, and people have probably done that on smaller models as well. And sometimes these bits are just too thick to do with one of these. Now I reckon with force I probably could do that, but what I will use is a razor saw. You can pick these up, I think Games Workshop sell them, you can grab them on Amazon. I think there's one on Amazon for about £7 or something. I recently replaced one. The smart thing to do would be to remove as far away from the model as possible to make sure you don't damage it. I always play it a little bit risky, so I have little, as less filing to do as possible, but I want to be really careful to don't damage the actual miniature. I do have a really big file here. Again, on some of the larger gates and some of the tanks, which obviously isn't so relevant here, the way it attaches can be really thick. I've got all your usual needle files and sandpaper and things that we use, which I don't actually have on display here, but this just takes a lot of the time out, and you can really kind of bear down a big chunk very, very quickly. Smaller files, you'll need those to tidy up afterwards, and also taking off any mould lines and things that are on the model helps remove flash, as does the handy old blade. I buy surgical blades, the cheaper non-sterile ones. So Swan Norton blades, you can get packs of like 500 for under a tenner. It's much cheaper than buying standard sort of hobby ones, so to speak. Selection of clippers. These are actually pliers, but sometimes I find I just need to hold something in tight when I cut, maybe when I'm trying to avoid taking from the end of my finger off. Drills, hand drills. I use a Dremel as well, mainly when I'm trying to bevel larger holes out for magnetization and things, but very handy to have. Brass rod and paper clips actually used for pinning. I don't know how much pinning I'm going to do on this model yet. I think I might have said when I did the unboxing, quite a lot of the actual fixing joints that are on here are fairly large. I mean, I know a lot of people would pin that as well. I'm going to see how strong it feels. I think the wings might need pinning. I'm not sure some of the other parts will, because the actual fixings are fairly deep themselves. Super glue and activator. This stuff is brilliant. You apply your super glue and then squirt this stuff, and it sets pretty much instantly, rather than trying to hold two parts together, which, as you can imagine, if you've got two really big chunky parts, that can take a while. This comes on it's like I'm sponsored by Amazon. I buy this stuff on Amazon. It's $5.99 on Prime, and you get 50 grams or 1.5 fluid ounces of this stuff, which is a lot. Not wanted again sort of do GW disservice, but those little squeezy pots of super glue are maybe fine for taking around in your gaming bag if you have breakages during events and things, but this is so much better value, and this is great. Milliput and green stuff for gap filling. Milliput is very, very good if you need to sand large areas, especially if it's non-organic, again things like tanks. It dries a lot harder and drier, so you can sand it and smooth it to straight edges. And then good old green stuff, better for organics, I believe. You can always make it fairly smooth and flat, but it always retains this kind of a rubbery nature, which makes it harder to get a really smooth finish when sanding. A final thing I don't use liquid green stuff. I use Vallejo plastic putty. Drop a bottle, squeeze a little bit out. I find it just far easier to use. It's not that horrible gritty, dry, grainy stuff, so I would recommend that. I haven't got sandpaper here on display, but I would recommend having a few sheets of different grades of sandpaper, but mainly fine stuff for smoothing over afterwards when you've been using something like this. There's probably things I've forgotten, but I just grabbed all the stuff on my desk that I would normally go for. If I think of anything in later videos when I actually start building it, then obviously you'll see them then. But this is just a kind of some of the stuff you may need. I think most hobbyists are going to have things like your clippers, your modelling blades and your files anyway. There's probably some green stuff and some super glue, but for larger models I would recommend picking up this different stuff you may or may not have. If you've never done pinning, you may not have a drill. GW do them. There's loads of them available online, very inexpensive. Definitely recommend this over liquor green stuff. And you may not have these things if you've not worked with bigger things before, but it's really worth it. If you're going to buy a kit that's hundreds and hundreds of pounds, whether that's a Smaug, whether it's a weather top or something like that, it's worth spending the extra sort of 10, 15 pounds to pick up these to make your job and life a lot easier. Well, thank you for making it to the end of another short video. Not super exciting, as I said at the beginning. There was no actual building or painting. I just wanted to give you a bit of an introduction if you're not used to dealing with larger forge-weld models, that kind of thing. The aim, and it is just an aim, is to get that built and painted over the next 2 months, so up until New Year really. For those of you who listen to our audio podcast will know that we've been working our way through the Quest of the Ringbearer book, and doing some of the narrative scenarios in there using online methods, so webcams and things like that, and I've been building terrain and painting models for it. As I record this, we're just about to record the show that deals with Farmer Maggot's crop, Buckleberry Ferry and Nazgul Bree. We've already done shows on Taming a Smeagol and Shalob's Lair and Weathertop. We're not doing it in a logical order. So after that we're planning to head to Moria for a couple of scenarios there, which involves me building Balin's tomb board and painting a lot of Moria goblins. So they are a priority over Smaug as it stands, but the hope is that I will get those done over the next 4 weeks. I'm recording this at the beginning of November, and then with a little bit in the background just slowly chip away at building Smaug, and then when we go into sort of December into New Year, this will be my kind of Christmas hobby project of painting Smaug. I will do my best. I won't promise to record everything, but I want to record video little bits. I'll keep looking there because I'm looking at the box of Smaug, so it looks like I'm mad. I plan to record snippets of doing it, so I'm not going to video the whole building process. I want to enjoy building it as well, and that means putting music on and singing loudly and all the other things that come along with when you're hobbying yourself. But I will kind of use it as a way to demonstrate some of the things I've been talking about. So cutting off those bigger gates, how to deal with cleaning up those large parts, a bit of pinning, a bit of gluing those larger things, and the process that I may take, and when I decide whether I'm going to build it in some assemblies or not for painting, or I leave the wings off, etc. So as I discover that, I will share that a bit with you guys, and then hopefully if you're planning on building a large kit like this, then it'll help you. And then when it gets to painting, I will do some painting videos, but again, I'm not going to do a tutorial. That was never the plan really. It was more to sort of take you on a bit of a journey and give you a few tips along the way if you haven't dealt with a model that big. If you are new to this channel and have just come across this, please do check out the other videos. They're not loads. It's a sister program really to our audio podcast, and the links for that are below. So Out of the Frying Pan podcast is a Middle-earth strategy battle game podcast based on Games Workshop's game. We talk about all things to do with the game. We do focus on a lot of narrative gaming at the moment. We do painting and hobby chat as well. I'm a commissioned painter. There's a link to that below. So there's always a lot of hobby stuff. We talk sort of lore and narrative and things like that as well. So we're not kind of fully focused on high-end competitive gaming, though we will sort of edge into that and talk about new profiles and rules as and when they come out. So if you haven't come across us before, go and check the podcast out below. There's probably 24, 25 episodes out now by the time you're finding this video. So links below. Thanks very much for watching. Please subscribe and all of that stuff, and I'll catch you soon.
Out of the frying pan and into the fire. Run! Run!